So Donald Trump has been lauded as the great new feminist of the United States. This comes from his executive order banning trans athletes in women's sport.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Destiny recently appeared as a guest on Piers Morgan's show, Piers Morgan Uncensored, where he went head-to-head with far-right pundit Andrew Willson. In the clip I'm about to share, they tackle one of Piers Morgan's most frequently obsessed over topics. In a rather bold claim, Piers Morgan asserts that Donald Trump is a feminist icon, which is easily one of the most ludicrous statements I've heard in a long time. So, let's dive into this discussion between Destiny and Andrew Willson, hosted by Piers Morgan. I've got plenty of thoughts on this too, so let's check it out together.
Let's take a look at him, surrounded by grateful women and girls as he did this.
You know, if you'd like to gather around me, I think I'm going to be okay. Come on. Come on. Secret Service is worried about them. If we have to worry about them, we have big problems. Okay, you want...
I don't think I've ever seen a finer feminist, Destiny.
I mean, this is like classic Republicans. Like Donald Trump tweets out at 4 a.m. that he's going to make the sun shine, and then at 6 a.m. the sun comes up and everybody worships him for it. I'm pretty sure, didn't the NCAA already roll back a lot of the trans participation in sports in the United States? And then I feel like we've already seen like the Olympic make moves against it. Like we've already seen like, I mean, in your country, in the United States, across the world, people have kind of like rolled back a little bit on a lot of the trans youth, especially the medication stuff.
Yeah, but you said the phrase there. When you say it's been a little bit and it's been piecemeal, sport by sport and age groups and so on. What Trump has done with one sweep of his pen is say no more of it at all, right? There will be no more trans athletes in women's sport, period. Now, I personally think this is absolutely the right thing to do. I think it's become the new doping, where people who have an unfair advantage have been, beating women, removing women from women's teams in, say, the Olympics and so on, actually beating up women, as we saw in the Paris Olympics, where somebody reportedly banned from the World Championships with male chromosomes literally beat up one female opponent so badly she quit after 40 seconds in the ring. So I do think this is a really important thing. Do you agree with him?
I don't think this is a very important thing. I don't even know if he can enforce this through executive order. Like, I don't know if this is going to be like some kind of Title IX challenge or whatever. I don't know what the courts are doing with this right now. It's just, I just don't think this is very relevant in the overall scheme of U.S. or world politics right now. I mean, if people don't want women competing with trans women, I especially at the college level and beyond, I don't really have a problem with that. I never really had a problem with that. I don't know if these two groups of people should be competing with each other. And this is like a blip on the grand scale of things, I think.
You know what's interesting, Andrew? I've talked to quite a few on the left since the election. They've moved from the position before the election. I'm not saying Destiny was one of them. I can't remember, and you can clarify if you want, Destiny. But a lot of them are like, absolutely, trans women should be allowed to compete in women's sport. Blah, 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 blah. And Biden and Kamala Harris supported this with actual policies endorsing it. And now the position is, you know what? Nobody cares. It's a thing. I don't have a view. I don't have a view. And I think it's because, to their shock and horror, the single most effective political ad of modern times turned out to be that trans ad that Trump did, ending with Kamala's for they, them, Donald Trump's for you, but also including this issue of women's sports and women's safety and the issue of putting, as we had in England, in Scotland, actually, a male rapist who suddenly identified as a woman and got put in a women's prison. It cost the First Minister of Scotland her job. I think it's a big issue, far bigger than Democrats want to admit. And it's interesting, the narrative has changed from we're all in favor to actually it's just a small thing, we don't care about it.
Yeah, this has been a major setback for LGBTQ, period. The trans issue has been the entry gateway for the one of the most brutal attacks against the left in modern times. And all you really have to do is just ask basic logistical questions like, okay, which prisons do they go to? You know what I mean? We were past bathrooms. We were into prisons and can children get gender reassignment surgery, things like this. This has always been a very, very unpopular position for leftists, but they can't really back away from it because the T got attached to the LGB, right? So they could never really back away from it. They've had to kind of defend it tooth and nail. To Destiny's credit, he's always had a more nuanced position on this of I don't care, at least to my knowledge. But ultimately, this is not popular for them. It's never been popular for them. When you're talking about what Trump is doing with the gender binary, I somewhat disagree. Not that he, the thing I agree with is that he proposed at a government top-down level. The United States only recognizes two genders. Now he means sexes, male and female, right? That's what he's alluding to there. But I do think it actually was very punishing for feminists to have fought all those years for their sports teams and then have men just go in and kick the holy shit out of them, right? So that actually mobilized. Yeah. Well,
It's interesting, or rather disturbing, to hear what Andrew Willson is advocating, especially given the context. What really strikes me as amusing is that ever since the issue of trans people in sports has come up, an issue that, like Destiny, I believe is trivial and not of real significance, the reaction from figures like Andrew Willson is quite telling. He scoffs at feminists, suggesting they are somehow undermined by trans individuals participating in sports, which just highlights the long-standing indifference of many conservatives towards women, especially in sports. It's almost comical how they've suddenly become champions of women's sports when historically they've ridiculed them, like making jokes about the WNBA, showing a clear lack of genuine concern for women's sports or women's issues at all. Instead, their sudden advocacy feels more like an attempt to leverage this issue to target a group they dislike and to criticize the left. Destiny rightly points out that this is not a genuine issue. The president of the NCAA testified before Congress in 2024, revealing that out of over 500,000 student athletes, fewer than 10 are trans. Even at the last Olympics held in Paris, only 3 trans athletes competed. Clearly, this issue is being inflated by people like Piers Morgan and Andrew Willson for their own agendas. If anyone tries to dismiss this as a non-issue, they face backlash from the right for not taking a stand, which is a common tactic to dominate the narrative and put others on the defensive. It's akin to a hypothetical scenario where a tiny group of people might only eat walnuts as their entire diet. And right-wingers would challenge you to state your stance on such a minuscule lifestyle choice, framing it as essential. If you express indifference, they criticize you for not caring, thereby controlling the dialogue and accusing you of being insensitive. The discussion then shifts to Piers Morgan's odd claim that Donald Trump is a feminist icon, based on his positions about trans athletes, a statement that seems more like an attempt at humor or a mere provocation given his obsession with the topic. It's absurd to label Trump a feminist icon over policies that won't realistically advance women's health, improve their salaries, reduce the income disparity between genders, or protect them from domestic violence. Instead, such measures only serve to attack and marginalize an already vulnerable group, making the claim of feminism completely baseless and showing it as nothing more than an attack disguised as concern.
But I mean, it mobilized a lot of those feminists to move away from the left because they were like, wait a second, this actually wasn't the liberation we signed up for, right? We spent all this time fighting for this. And now you can just basically put on a wig and go break all of our records. I mean, it's just a huge loser for the left. And
I agree. Destiny, I want to read you a quote from Andrew Willson he posted this week. The most disappointing thing about feminists is how made out of glass they are. With the slightest pushback, they break. They demand equality until you talk to them like you would a man. It's actually comical. Would you concur with him?
I mean, that's everybody in politics. I mean, everybody's a snowflake depending on what the issue you're talking about is. I don't think that it's ever been a huge issue on most of the left when it comes to trans stuff. I think there's a vocal minority on Twitter and in colleges that scream about it. I think it seems like it's a huge issue because Republicans wanted it to be a huge issue. Even that commercial you were talking about was quoting something that Kamala said in 2019. So it seemed like some huge, ever-present issue. But I don't know. I guess I'm looking more towards like domestic policy, like things related to immigration or healthcare or what's happening right now in our executive branch or foreign policy. Like I thought the war in Ukraine was supposed to end on day one. I didn't know that we were signing up to be owners of Greenland and the Gaza Strip and the Panama Canal. These things I think are more important, at least to me. But I don't know. Maybe some people are really powered by what Republicans think. I don't know.
I got a 13-year-old daughter. And I got to say, if I was living in America, she was born there actually, but if I was living in America with a 13-year-old daughter who likes sport, I would be very exercised about this, and particularly if she had to share changing rooms with biological men who said, I'm now a woman.
Yeah, I think I'd be more worried about my daughter like dying in Texas, like trying to get a medical procedure done because I'm pretty sure there've been 3 deaths now so far in Texas of young women that are pregnant that can't have medical procedures done because the doctors have to be so careful when they're doing them that they can't accidentally abort a fetus because then they'll be held liable for crime. So I think these are things I'd be worried about more than trans athletes, which are
more than a woman
percentage of
potentially
anything.
being killed in a boxing ring by a trans athlete.
How many times has this happened?
Well, it hasn't yet, but it will do if it carries on.
Exactly. But it already has happened with the abortion thing. So that's what I'm more worried about. Yeah.
Yeah, but children's gender reassignment surgery, that is something which has been on the table for a long time. That's one. And two, when you're talking about this issue, it's kind of revisionist history, right? Now, suddenly the Democrats don't care, right? Oh, we it was always a vocal minority. No, it really wasn't. These were very, very public fights going on at the national level. And the reason is because this was a moral question. We're talking about a moral question from the viewpoint of the Christian right, which most right-wingers are Christians. You're actually assaulting their religion. You're assaulting their idea of what moral grounding even is. So to them, it's a huge deal. For Destiny, who has a completely different moral prism, it's really not a big deal, right? He doesn't really care about it. It's not that important. But to the average person, at least to the average right-wing conservative who's a Christian, it's a huge deal. The assault of the moral foundation is something they're going to take issue with. It's going to be one of their top priorities. So to say that Democrats were not fighting tooth and nail on behalf of trans inclusiveness, including in sports and everything, it's just insane revisionism. Of course,
yeah, they absolutely were. I mean, I look at someone like J.K. Rowling, who got absolutely, destroyed by the woke brigade for standing up for women's rights to fairness and equality. Now everyone lauds her for her heroic stance, but at the time, most women understandably put their head under the vicious parapet and didn't.
Piers Morgan has another peculiar fixation. He often criticizes the left for claiming to be kind and good-hearted, then points to various instances where they allegedly fall short, such as their criticisms of J.K. Rowling. He presents these arguments in a very slimy and disingenuous manner. Andrew Willson discusses how crucial these issues are to the Christian right, proclaiming their moral high ground, yet they frequently contradict the very tenets of their religion. For example, the Pope has criticized J.D. Vance's narrow interpretation of loving your neighbor, which Vance limits to immediate neighbors, ignoring global responsibilities. This contrasts sharply with accusations from the right that the left cares only about international issues, while neglecting domestic concerns, which is a complete distortion of the truth. Andrew Willson portrays the Christian right as morally upright, yet their actions often reveal a disdain for immigrants, the poor, and essentially anyone who differs from them. If Jesus were to return today, the very same group would likely reject him, dismissing him as a socialist hippie unfit for their support. They claim to hold their beliefs on moral grounds, but such claims are laughable given their actual attitudes and behaviors. Destiny and I concur that these issues, which Piers Morgan and figures like Andrew Willson obsess over, are trivial and distract from more pressing concerns. However, for people like Piers Morgan and Andrew Willson, these topics remain central to their rhetoric. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you side with Destiny and me, or with Piers Morgan and Andrew Willson? Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more discussions like this. This is Cole Talk, and I'll see you in the next video.